Raised with nothing, chose to give everything. My dad was a poor white kid who ate out of dumpsters in Slidell, Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans. The summer his family became homeless, he saw his mother give up hope, his brothers and sister decide to start stealing, and he simply refused to join them. So at age 13, he was going to a gas station bathroom to clean up and continuing to walk to school every day. On the fourth day of going to school by himself and of his own volition, despite starving and sleeping in an abandoned, burnt-down store with his shit-hook family, his aunt was waiting for him in the parking lot. She kidnapped him in the legal sense, but no one bothered to look for him, and no cops were ever called. He lived with his aunt for the remainder of his school years. This was an entirely different life. Money, responsibility, two-story home with a bedroom just for him upstairs. She told him in no uncertain terms that she took him because he had made it clear he was the one who had a shot at being something better. So he made it his personal mission not to disappoint her. He studied computers at the dawn of computers, loved everything about them. His grades were so good that he got a full-ride scholarship to LSU, but once there, working on an IT degree and saving money, his family began to beg for money and harass him. So he dropped out of LSU and joined the Air Force instead. He created a joint bank account with his mother so that the money he made in basic could support him and help her get back on her feet. When he got home from basic training, the account was empty. She spent everything. She told him he shouldn't be mad because he owed it to her after abandoning the family when he was 13 and eating thrown-away day-old fast food to survive. He was devastated, but ended his relationships with his immediate family and took his first position 1,000 miles away on an Air Force base in Arkansas. He got married to the first woman who showed him interest, but she was needy and clingy and suffocating. Less than 6 months into the marriage, he let his oldest brother come visit his new apartment, and his wife slept with his brother. They got divorced. He once again swore off his family. He got into IT for the Air Force and moved into the supply division. 2 years later, while hanging out with friends at the Air Force Base PX, they all stopped for a drink in the bar. That's where he met my mom. She was getting clean off speed by staying with her sister and her brother-in-law, another Air Force guy who had never met my dad before, as they did very different things. The four of them hung out together after that. My dad fell hard for my mom, but my mom knew she wasn't there permanently and would be heading home in a few months. Which she did, only to discover she was pregnant. She went back after I was born, told him about me, and they stayed up late having a 7-hour conversation that resulted in them getting married and finding a housing unit on the base. That's where my first memories start. I grew up on an Air Force base. She hated it more and more, all coming to a head when she missed a job interview because a military training exercise had shut down the front gate and she wasn't allowed to leave. They moved to Kentucky, where her family was from, and my dad transitioned from full-time to the National Guard and got a job in IT working at City Hall. He transitioned the city from paper to digital in the early 90s, helped the power company and the local banks install their first computer systems. She ran a restaurant, but my dad pushed her to earn a degree. She chose child psychology and started working at a youth treatment center for emotionally fragile kids who had been through some pretty serious shit. She hated every second of it and eventually got fired for applying a Band-Aid to a child who had cut open his elbow. She was told she wasn't allowed to touch them herself and should have called for the medical team. I know that woman well enough to say she used a lot of profanity while calling them all stupid to their faces and rolling her eyes at the thought that a small scrape needed a medical team or that applying a Band-Aid did some kind of irreparable emotional damage. While in the Guards, he became the state's youngest ever Master Sergeant. She went back to managing restaurants. That environment led her back to drugs, but she remained highly functioning and incredibly private. My sister and I had no idea she was hiding in the bathroom doing meth while we were in middle school. We just thought she didn't like us very much, or found us annoying. Don't worry about me, I did therapy and I'm good. As bad as this part of the story sounds, she was a very good mom in so many other ways and did get clean again before I got to high school. And again, I had no idea what was really happening and didn't find out until years later. It was like watching puzzle pieces fall into place when I started to understand the reality of my middle school years and the things she was hiding in the bathroom. After September 11th, my dad was put on active duty and moved to the big blue-leaning city. I was 16 and angry and arguing with my mom so often that they decided I could move in with my dad for the summer in the apartment the base was providing the recently activated troops. I loved the city, knew I wasn't supposed to be in a small town instantly. The city made sense for me, and the Air Force offered NY Dad a full-time position after his year was up, one that would move his retirement up by a decade. So the whole family moved to the city right in the middle of my junior year. That was as fun as it sounds. But I was used to moving a lot, and it had made me very good at being funny. I later became a stand-up comic. My dad was suddenly on a 6-figure salary. My mom didn't need to work anymore, so she spent her time smoking weed and hanging out by the pool and throwing epic summer pool parties and holiday dinners. 30 guest affairs that put your house parties to shame. Then she ended up going through 15 years of neck and back surgeries. So things weren't perfect, but active duty military insurance for a spouse of a ranking service member was the blessing you would want it to be, and we never went into debt. During this time, with so much going on at home, my dad still spent his time at work mentoring young 20-somethings who were disadvantaged. His way of giving back, I suppose, all in honor of his aunt who changed his life. He wanted to do the same for other smart poor kids. One of them was a young black kid who didn't know how to progress his Air Force career until my dad sparked up some conversations with him, began offering advice, helped him get into education he needed, and started writing letters of recommendation for this kid. Last year, that kid, now himself a decorated Air Force veteran, found my dad on Facebook and told him how much his mentorship changed his life. And as a thanks, he sent my parents on a 2-week vacation to any location of their choosing, all expenses paid. I was never told this, but clearly he would not take no for an answer. I know my father very well, and he definitely tried to say no multiple times. I can guarantee that mentored kid, now grown and quite successful, wouldn't let him turn down the offer. I can also guarantee my mother was adamant they accept because she wanted a vacation after being 5 years out from her last surgery with no further complications. My dad didn't help poor kids because he saw free vacations in his future. He did it because he is built entirely of love and gratitude, and I was the luckiest son on earth to have him accidentally become my father thanks to a one-night stand with a Kentucky addict from the hollers outside of Hazard. He makes every person he comes into contact with a better person. His kids, his wife, his co-workers. Just about the only people he can't help are his own immediate family members, because you can't help people who don't want help, or who can't see their own destructive and selfish behavior as the bad thing it really is. He told me during a rough patch in my 20s before I went to therapy, "You can't save everyone, but you can throw a life jacket to the ones who are still swimming." At his aunt's funeral 3 years ago, I found out she is the one who told him that after none of his siblings came to his birthday. He yelled at her for the first and only time because she only took him and not all of them. They weren't swimming. They didn't deserve the life jacket. But he was. So she threw him one, and he used it to climb out of the deep, dark ocean he should have been doomed to drown in. Metaphorically, of course. Turns out he had been throwing his brothers and sister little bits of cash every month for the last 20 years. Easily $20,000 over 2 decades. Even paid the first month's rent on his mom's shitty apartment after Hurricane Katrina ruined her trailer. He never forgot them. He just stayed away from them. He talks to them all on the phone weekly, even though they always seem to find ways to continue hurting him. That part I will never fully understand. His expectations for them are low, but they somehow go lower. He tried to take a life insurance policy out on his mom a few years back so he would have a check to cover her funeral when it came, but his brothers found out and freaked out on him like he was trying to make money off of her somehow. His sister said he would have to split the money with all of them, or it wouldn't be fair. The money from a policy he would be paying for without any help from them. And somehow they felt owed a part of the future payout. It was really mind-blowing, so he told them he wouldn't even take out a policy as long as they didn't ever expect him to pay a dime for the funeral. And so, a man of his word, when she died in a fire with one of her grandchildren, he didn't pay for a funeral. The universe had cremated her, so he didn't really have to debate it with anyone anyway. I know that sounds harsh, but I have no love for her. She did one good thing her entire life, not trying to take him back from his aunt. When he retired from the Air Force, his boss said, "You know how they say you should try to be the person your dog thinks you are?" That's him. He is absolutely always the person his dog thinks he is. I just wish he wouldn't make them all fat with table scraps, but it's still hard for him to throw away leftovers. It bothers him tremendously to think of just throwing food into a garbage can. I know why.